The purse hit the floor. Not dramatically, not loudly, just enough. Enough for the room to glance. Enough for her to freeze. Enough for me, standing across the room, blending in with the sea of wine glasses and fake office laughter, to know she saw it. I watched her blink once. Then again. Then her hand went inside. She felt it before she saw it. You could tell by the way her fingers curled. There was a softness in the motion that turned to stiffness. Like she touched something hot. Something forbidden. I saw her lips part. Saw her eyes dart. Left. Right. Not to look for me. She didn't even know I was there yet. But to make sure no one else had noticed. But someone had. Camden. Of course. Camden. With his always undone top button and that stupid velvet blazer that screamed trust fund marketing guru. He leaned toward her and said something. I couldn't hear it over the music. Her response was slower. She was no longer pretending to be flirty. She wasn't pretending anything anymore. She pulled it out. The ring. My ring. No, not hers. Not anymore. Mine. And the note tucked under it like a rotting secret. She didn't open it. She didn't have to. She knew exactly what it said. She looked up, straight across the room, and found me, holding a glass of water like it was wine, dressed in the shirt she told me never flattered me, standing next to her boss's wife, who happened to be laughing at something I'd just said. That moment, that flicker of panic in her throat before she swallowed it, that was the first time I'd seen her scared of me. And I hadn't said a word. Not yet. But I would. Oh, I would. She didn't read the note at first. Not because she didn't want to. No, Olivia always wanted to know. She was obsessed with control. The type of person who needed to finish your sentences for you just to prove she already knew how you felt before you did. But in that moment, she hesitated, not because of what I wrote, but because of where we were. Corporate parties are fake. Everyone knows it. I saw 5 people walk in without their spouses and suddenly pretend to be saints. But Olivia was especially careful about her image. Ever since she joined Camden's team, it was like she'd found a mirror version of herself, shinier, bolder, more marketable. And standing there, under the golden Edison bulbs of that overpriced condo, she realized she had no idea how to fake her way out of what I'd just done. She tucked the ring back in the purse without opening the note. That disappointed me, honestly. I put a lot of thought into it. Just 9 words. Short sentences. Sharp. Honest. I had rewritten it maybe 20 times before settling on the version that would leave her no room to manipulate. No jokes. No metaphors. Just truth. The kind she never allowed in conversations anymore. When her eyes swept the room and landed on me, I didn't smile. I didn't move. I held her gaze like it was a loaded gun. Her expression faltered, just enough for Camden to notice. He leaned in again, his smug mouth whispering something only she could hear, probably some nonsense about everything being okay. That she could explain it. Or worse, maybe he already knew what she'd find in her purse. Maybe he knew more than I did. I watched her hand tremble as she picked up a champagne flute. She nodded along to whatever he was saying, but her eyes weren't tracking. She was stuck somewhere in the memory of the last conversation we had before she left for this team mixer. When I asked her if she'd be late, she scoffed, said, "Liam, it's just work." Then she put on lipstick I hadn't seen in months, spritzed perfume reserved for something more than PowerPoint slides, and left with the kind of confidence you only wear when you're lying to someone who loves you. And now, she was unraveling. I timed it perfectly. I knew she'd open the purse eventually. Olivia never left it unattended for more than 10 minutes. I'd snuck it in the night before, during one of those dull evenings where she spent hours replying to Slack messages with a wine glass in one hand and fake laughter in the other. I slipped the ring inside while she was in the shower, the note folded flat beneath it like a message in a coffin. I walked toward the bar slowly. I didn't care who saw me anymore. I didn't care if I was the only guy in the room wearing scuffed shoes and a shirt that hadn't seen an iron. Let them all whisper. I stopped 4 feet from her. She turned to me with that fake grin, the one she'd mastered since she got promoted. "Liam, what are you doing here?" I wanted to say 1,000 things, but instead, I just nodded toward her purse. "Lose something?" I asked. Camden blinked. "Is everything okay?" She stammered. For once, Olivia, the queen of quick comebacks and polished charm, had nothing. "Excuse me," she muttered, clutching her bag like it might explode. She slipped away toward the hallway near the coat room. Camden followed. So did I. But unlike them, I had no reason to hide anymore. And if she opened that note now, in front of him, Then the mask wasn't just going to slip, it was going to shatter. The hallway was quieter than I expected, padded with expensive rugs and those ridiculous fake candles that flicker like they're alive. I stopped just short of the corner, where the coat room opened into a half-lit space with mirrors on both sides. I didn't need to lean in far. Their voices weren't exactly subtle. "What is this?" Camden was the first to break the silence, and it wasn't curiosity in his voice. It was panic. Like he knew he'd been part of something that wasn't just scandalous, but stupid. Olivia didn't answer. I could see her reflection in the side mirror, her back to him, the note open in her hand, my ring glittering beside her phone on the shelf like it didn't belong to anyone anymore. "Is this some kind of joke?" he asked again, louder this time. "Is your husband here?" Her voice, when it came, was quieter than I'd ever heard it. "He must have put it in my purse last night." "No, I thought. I put it in yours weeks ago. You just didn't notice. You never notice anything that isn't about you." I watched Camden cross his arms and tilt his head the way all smug men do when they realize they've accidentally stepped into real consequences. "So what, Olivia? He knows? What did you tell him?" "Nothing," she snapped. "I didn't tell him anything. I didn't even know he was capable of doing this," I said, stepping into view. They both jumped. I don't even think Camden recognized me at first, not without the glasses and hoodie I usually wore, the invisible husband uniform. But Olivia knew instantly. Her face drained of color, like I'd just stepped out of a grave she thought she'd already buried me in. "Liam," she started. "No," I said. "You don't get to talk first. You already had your opening act." I looked at Camden. "She ever tell you about our kid?" His eyes narrowed. "You have a kid?" "No," I said flatly. "We don't. Because she didn't want one. Too inconvenient. Too career stalling. But I found the old test in the trash a few years ago. Positive. She never told me. So I guess she made the decision alone." Olivia flinched. She didn't deny it. "And you," I said, turning to Camden, "are just another temporary chapter she thinks she can edit when the story gets boring." "I didn't know." "Of course you didn't," I interrupted. "You think she brought her wedding ring to this party on accident? She took it off so long ago, I almost forgot what her finger looked like with it on." Camden shifted uncomfortably. "Look, man, I didn't know she was." "Spare me," I muttered. "She knew exactly how to play this. And you let her." Olivia finally spoke. "So what? You followed me. Spied on me." "No," I said. "I just stopped pretending I didn't exist." I stepped closer and looked her in the eyes. "I didn't write that note for you," I said. "I wrote it for him." Camden looked confused until she handed him the paper. He unfolded it slowly, like he was scared it would burn his hands. "Enjoy the fallout. She's been rehearsing it for years." He blinked. I turned and walked away before either of them could think of something clever to say. There was nothing left to explain. Not to them. But what Olivia didn't know, and Camden couldn't possibly suspect, was that this wasn't the first place I'd left that note. It was just the first one they found. I didn't leave the party right away. Not because I wanted to stay. God, no. The music was too loud, the wine too warm, and every guy in that room looked like someone who'd call his podcast Hustle and Grind. But I lingered for a reason. I wanted to see it. I wanted to watch Olivia return from that hallway, trying to staple her face back into something smooth and polished, trying to act like she hadn't just been called out in front of the man she'd slowly replaced me with. And sure enough, 10 minutes later, there she was, walking back into the room like she hadn't nearly dropped her entire world in that coat room. Her heels clicked sharper now. Her smile was too wide. Her movements too deliberate. But her eyes? Her eyes searched the room like she was scanning for ghosts. She didn't find me. I was already outside by then, leaning against the back of a stranger's SUV, staring at the glowing windows on the third floor, watching shadows shift behind the curtains, wondering what lie she was telling Camden now. Probably some twisted version where I was unstable, obsessed, possessive, her favorite defense. But here's the part she never expected. That note in her purse, the one with my ring and the 9 words, that was just one. Earlier that morning, I left the second note, tucked it inside the drawer of her desk at work. The drawer she never locked because she never thought I'd be near her new world. I dropped by the office under the pretense of bringing her lunch. She didn't even look up from her laptop when she told me to just leave it on the couch. So I left it in the drawer instead, beside her backup perfume and the lip gloss she didn't use at home anymore. And then came the third, the final one. The one she hadn't found yet. The one that would make everything else look like foreplay. It was sitting right where she'd least expect it, inside a thin envelope labeled in perfect cursive, to HR, private. Yeah, I went there. I didn't write anything crazy. I didn't accuse. I just documented. Dates, messages, screenshots, names. I even attached a printed copy of a very cozy Slack conversation she once forgot to delete off her desktop. And no, I didn't send it directly. That would have been too easy. I handed it to the front desk girl that morning, told her Olivia had asked me to drop it off. She didn't ask questions. She smiled, thanked me, and placed it right into the internal mailbox tray. That was 10 hours ago. I figured someone would open it Monday morning, right when Olivia strutted into the building like she still had all her strings untangled. She thought the party was the peak of the disaster. She thought my presence, my ring, my little note in her bag was the climax. She had no idea she was still climbing. And the fall? It was going to be public, personal, and professional. The kind that makes people look at you differently in the elevator. I didn't want revenge. That's not what this was. I just wanted the truth to echo. Because for years, I whispered it into walls while she silenced it with makeup sex and distracted smiles. Now the truth was printed on office paper and sealed in a neutral envelope, with a paperclip and polite punctuation. And it was waiting, just like I had been. Monday arrived like it always did, mercilessly. Olivia left the house just after 7, dressed in her usual armor, tailored blazer, lips sharp as her heels, and that untouchable stare she reserved for the world she'd built without me in it. She didn't say goodbye. She hadn't said goodbye in weeks. Just grabbed her keys, tapped her phone, and vanished behind the door like a successful executive slipping into a boardroom instead of someone walking away from a marriage. I sat in silence at the kitchen table, coffee gone cold in front of me. The silence used to feel like a punishment. Now it felt like permission. By 9:12 a.m., it began. The first text wasn't from her. It was from her assistant, Madeline. I recognized the name from Olivia's email threads. Short message. Hey, just a heads up, something's going around from HR. Thought you should know. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because that something was mine. Somewhere between her third sip of oat milk latte and her second round of passive-aggressive meetings, she'd have been called into that glass-walled office with the sliding door that never quite shut. The envelope would already be on the table. Maybe someone had highlighted phrases. Maybe they'd printed the Slack messages in color. I don't know. I wasn't there. But I know Olivia. I know her default moves. Denial. Charm. Strategic confusion. Except this time, confusion wouldn't help her. Because the evidence didn't accuse, it showed. In detail. Without anger. Without bitterness. Just time-stamped reality. Printed in grayscale and clipped neatly to a timeline that contradicted every version she would try to tell. By 11:46 a.m., she finally texted me. Liam, what the hell did you do? No question mark. Just panic-typed fast. I let it sit. An hour later, another message came. Can we talk? And another. I didn't mean for it to get to this. I almost laughed at that one. Not because it was funny, but because it was her first honest message in months. I didn't reply. Instead, I turned off my phone, grabbed my laptop, and drove to a small cafe in West Grove where the Wi-Fi was decent and no one knew me as Olivia's husband. I ordered the same bland sandwich I always got. And for the first time in forever, I opened a spreadsheet I'd been working on in secret, one that had nothing to do with Olivia's world. She used to say I was too cautious to ever make anything happen, that I didn't know how to push forward. Maybe she was right, back then. But what she never knew was that I'd been collecting things in silence. Skills, ideas, even contacts she'd introduced me to during her rise. The ones who used to pretend not to see me at corporate functions. I wasn't chasing her anymore. I was building something past her. At 2:08 p.m., another text came in. This one longer. Desperate. She mentioned Camden. Said she cut ties with him. Said it wasn't what it looked like. But she didn't know what I had already done. She didn't know who I'd met that morning. A name I won't share here, out of respect, but someone with power at her company who'd asked to meet me discreetly after the envelope reached HR. They weren't angry with me. They were grateful. Apparently, Olivia's little personal use of company tools wasn't a one-time thing. She'd made other mistakes, left other trails. They'd been looking for a reason to open a deeper investigation. I just opened the door. Now they were walking in. And Olivia? She was walking blindfolded toward a cliff, texting the same man she once called too quiet to hurt anybody, begging him to stop a chain reaction she didn't even know she'd triggered. And I was just eating my sandwich. I knew she was coming before she knocked. She never texted after 4 p.m. unless it was urgent. Olivia wasn't the kind to make a scene during business hours. That would have broken her rulebook. But by 5:17 p.m., I heard her car pull into the driveway, the way she always parked slightly crooked like she was too busy for precision. I didn't move from the kitchen. I let her knock 3 times before I answered. When I opened the door, I expected a tired, maybe slightly embarrassed version of my wife. But what stood there was a storm. Olivia's face was pinched, eyes swollen like she'd cried in the car and tried to cover it up with concealer. Her jaw was locked. Her hands gripped her phone like it was a weapon. "You're proud of this?" she said before I could say anything. "You feel powerful now." I didn't answer. I just stepped aside and let her in. She stomped past me like it was still her house. She still had keys, technically. I hadn't changed the locks. Not yet. She threw her purse on the couch, paced once, then turned on me like I'd started a war. "They suspended me," she said. "Pending review. You think that's funny?" I didn't laugh. But I also didn't apologize. She hated that even more. "You don't get it, do you?" she hissed. "You sabotaged me." "Sabotaged?" I finally said. "Olivia, you sabotaged yourself. You just didn't expect anyone to hold up a mirror." She froze for half a second. The truth has a weight to it. You can see it hit people when they weren't ready to carry it. "But Olivia?" She just threw it back. "This is because you're weak," she said. "You couldn't handle that I had a better job, that I made more, that people respected me." I let that sink in. That wasn't just rage. That was real. That's what she'd been thinking all along. "You think I did all this because I was jealous?" I asked quietly. "You did it because you couldn't control me anymore," she snapped. That's when I finally broke. Not in anger, not in shouting, just truth. "I did it," I said, "because I let myself become invisible. And when I realized you didn't even miss me, I decided the only way you'd see me again was if I turned on the lights." She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. "I didn't ruin your career, Olivia," I continued. "I didn't make you sleep with Camden. I didn't tell you to fake work trips or delete texts or laugh at me behind my back. You did all of that. I just stopped hiding it." She sat down. Hard. The kind of fall you don't expect when your knees go weak. She rubbed her temples like she was trying to disappear inside her own skull. Then her voice came out softer. Quieter. "They're going to dig. You understand that? HR is going to go through everything. They're not just looking at me, Liam. They'll see Camden. They'll see messages. This could get public." I sat down across from her. "Then I suggest you start writing a resignation speech," I said. "Because this time, I'm not covering for you." She looked at me like I was speaking a different language. Maybe I was. I wasn't the man she married anymore. That guy? He would have begged, cried, offered to take the fall just to save her image. That guy had bled himself dry so she could shine. But he was gone. And in his place? Someone colder, calmer, clearer. "I want the house," she said suddenly, like she was still in control. "If this goes to court, I'm not going to let you take everything." I almost smiled. Not because I wanted to fight, but because she was still clinging to the only thing she thought I cared about. "I'm not taking everything, Olivia," I said. "Just my name back." She blinked. "What does that even mean?" "You'll find out," I said, standing up. Because what she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that earlier that afternoon, I'd met with someone else. Someone whose name she remembered, but hadn't spoken to in years. Someone she used to call her best friend, until that friend warned her not to mess with me. And now, that friend wanted to talk. And unlike Olivia, she actually remembered who I was. The meeting had been her idea, not Olivia's. Tessa's. A name I hadn't heard in over 3 years. A name Olivia used to say every single day, until she didn't. Until they had some fallout that she never fully explained. Something about misaligned priorities or drifting values. What she really meant was, Tessa saw too much. And Olivia doesn't keep people around once they stop nodding. Tessa had been at our wedding. She cried during the vows. She once helped Olivia through a health scare, stayed with her for a week. She knew every version of my wife. Before the suits, before the boss babe energy, before the curated Instagram perfection. And then, suddenly, she was gone. And now she was back. I met her at a quiet tea shop on the south end of town. She chose the place, somewhere Olivia would never go, she said. She was right. Tessa hadn't changed much. Still dressed like a second-hand bookstore owner. Soft voice. Kind eyes. But there was something sharper about her now. She looked at me with the calm curiosity of someone who'd figured out more than she was letting on. I know about Camden, she said plainly, within the first 2 minutes. I blinked. How? Because Olivia's not as careful as she thinks, she replied. And because she texted me 6 months ago asking if I thought she was a bad person. That made me flinch. I wasn't expecting that. I didn't know she still talked to you, I said. She doesn't. That was the last message she ever sent me. I waited. She sipped her tea, then leaned in. You're doing the right thing, she said. I knew something was wrong with her years ago, but she wouldn't hear it. She just kept pushing everyone out who didn't feed her story. You were her best friend, I said. I was, Tessa nodded. Until I told her she was becoming cruel. That word hit me hard. Cruel. Not ambitious. Not busy. Cruel. Because that's what it had started to feel like. Like she enjoyed how invisible I became. Like my presence was just an echo she learned to tune out. Tessa looked down, then slid an envelope across the table. What's this? I asked. Her calendar backups, she said. From when she stayed with me after your first major fight. You know, the one about New York. My stomach turned. The New York trip. The one she swore was for training. The one she refused to let me come on because it was intense and too fast-paced for me to keep up. The one that started the long, slow unraveling of our intimacy. She stayed with you that weekend? I asked, feeling sick. Tessa nodded slowly. Only for the first night. She booked a hotel the next morning. Said she needed space. But she left her shared calendar open on my old iPad. I saw where she really went. Camden. She didn't answer. Just pushed the envelope a little closer. I wasn't going to get involved, Tessa said. I figured if she was going to self-destruct, she'd do it all on her own. But then I heard what happened at the party. What you did. And I realized, you're not the one who needs to disappear. That sentence stayed with me for the rest of the day. I didn't open the envelope until I got home. Inside were screenshots, notes, call logs. Even one stupid, blurry selfie of Olivia in bed, captioned, work hard, play harder, face blowing a kiss. Timestamped to the exact weekend she said she was too sick for FaceTime. I didn't cry. Not this time. I just sat on the floor, surrounded by printed truth, and realized something for the first time in years. This wasn't just about betrayal. It was about erasure. I had been erased, minimized, rewritten as a background character in the story of her rising career. But not anymore. Now I had the receipts. And I had someone who once knew her better than anyone else backing me up. I didn't want revenge. Still didn't. I just wanted clarity. Proof. Closure. But that night, around 11:14 p.m., Olivia texted me again. We need to talk. You're making this worse than it needs to be. And I realized. She still thought she was in control. She still believed I'd back down. What she didn't know was that I'd just emailed her company's general counsel with a courtesy heads up. And I wasn't doing it out of spite. I was doing it out of self-respect. The version of me she left behind wouldn't have made it this far. But the version she created, the one who watched, remembered, and waited, he was just getting started. I didn't reply to her last text. Not because I didn't have anything to say. Trust me, I did. I had pages worth of things I could have thrown back at her. But I'd finally realized something. Olivia didn't deserve my words anymore. Not the careful ones. Not the emotional ones. Not even the angry ones. She had spent so long ignoring my voice that giving her one more piece of it felt like feeding a fire that already burned our house down. So I went silent. And silence, it turns out, is louder than rage when someone's used to controlling your volume. The fallout came quicker than I expected. HR didn't fire her right away. No, that would have been too clean. Instead, they reassigned her. Shifted her out of client-facing roles. Stripped her of travel privileges. Launched an internal review that lasted just long enough for people to start whispering in elevators. Camden? He got transferred to another state for optics. I don't know what lie she spun for him. Maybe she told him I was unstable. Maybe she said she never meant for it to go this far. Doesn't matter. Their story ended right where mine used to sit. Unappreciated, off to the side, forgotten until it was convenient. But I didn't forget. And I didn't fade again. I filed for divorce a week later. Quietly. Cleanly. No drawn-out fight. No social media war. Just paperwork, signed and notarized. When she got served, I heard from Tessa that Olivia cried in her car for 20 minutes. But even then, she didn't call me. She knew it was over. And here's the part one didn't expect, the part that still makes me pause when I think about it. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like recovery. Like I was finally stepping out of a coma I didn't know I'd been in. I moved out of the house 2 months later. Got a small apartment on the east side. Nothing fancy, just a clean space. Quiet. Peaceful. Mine. I started freelancing again, small web projects at first, then something bigger. Tessa introduced me to someone at a nonprofit who needed a full digital rebuild. Then someone else called. Then another. Within 3 months, I had more work than I knew what to do with, and for the first time in years, people looked at me and saw value. Not as someone's husband, just me. And then, one afternoon, while grabbing groceries, I ran into someone. She was in line ahead of me, arguing with the cashier over expired coupons. Her cart was chaotic, frozen waffles, scented candles, 3 kinds of hummus. She looked over her shoulder, sighed, and said, "Sorry, this is probably going to take a while." I smiled. I'm in no rush. She laughed, and for some reason, so did I. Her name was Mira. She was a high school counselor, recently divorced, and had a sarcastic sense of humor that didn't hide behind politeness. We got coffee, then lunch, then dinner. And here's the difference. She listened, not out of obligation, or manipulation, or performance. She listened because she wanted to hear me. I didn't expect a new relationship. I wasn't chasing one. But sometimes, healing doesn't come in grand gestures or epic revenge. Sometimes, it arrives in small conversations with someone who sees you before you even speak. Olivia tried to rewrite my story, but I picked up the pen, and I didn't write her out of it. I just made sure she didn't get to write the ending. Because the truth? I was never weak. I was just patient. And now, I wasn't her shadow anymore. I was my own.